Hi, it's Chaos. Welcome back into this video on traps in Dayz. If you want to see some of them in action, I recommend watching this video to start with. Otherwise, let's dive straight in, starting with bear traps. Bear traps spawn in hunting locations across the map, and once set will remain there for 7 days or until activated. If you walk into a bear trap, they don't do loads of damage, so they won't kill you if you have full health, but they will break your legs. You can disarm a bear trap by using a long stick or by ruining it, and you can't usually jump over it. You may be able to do so if you've got a bit of a height advantage, but if it's level then it won't work. Despite the name though, the bear trap won't do much damage to a bear. It will trigger it, but it'll still be charging at you. To kill a bear, it usually needs to walk into 4 or 5 of them, so it's barely worth it. Barely worth it? Barely worth it? Let's touch upon grenades, pox grenades and flashbangs next. Flashbangs are found all over the map. You don't usually have to look far to find them. They will inflict a very minor amount of damage, but are mostly used to blind enemies. If it goes off in front of another player, their screen will turn white and they'll barely be able to see anything for up to 8 seconds. You can find grenades in high tier military zones. The grenades do not explode if you're shot when attached to your vest or in your inventory, so you're safe at least until it's time to throw them in a window, which is a free-for-all. The two grenades are slightly different, where the M79 will kill someone up to 16 meters away with or without a plate. That kill zone is about the length of 1.5 of these buses. The RDG5 is about half of that, at 7 meters or 8 without a plate. To destroy a wall though, you'll need 12 of either of them, and you can kill a bear with 8. Finally, there's nothing like carrying around flatulence in a jar. Because you can't brew your own in Dayz, you'll find pox vials in dynamic gas zones and can safely loot them where the gas clears. They're usually on the floor around the centre of the zone, so move in quickly when the gas clears to grab them. Pox vials will explode on impact when you throw them and create a 20 meter wide gas cloud that lasts for up to 6 minutes, giving bleeds to anyone inside every 15 seconds, giving gas poisoning in 30 seconds and killing you in 1 minute 30. Pox vials cannot be attached to vests and won't explode in your inventory if you're shot. One pox grenade will also kill a bear in about 4 minutes, but since you have to trap it there, there's very little point, as in my experience they're just as likely to glitch out and tear you to pieces. Moving on, probably one of my favourites and massively underrated are tripwires. You can craft a tripwire using metal wire and 2 small sticks. If you have barbed wire, you can use pliers to turn it into metal wire. On their own, they will make a player stumble, leaving them vulnerable to attacks, but they won't do any damage. You can jump over a tripwire, but there's very little point as you can safely slow walk through without triggering it. You can also attach grenades, smoke grenades and flashbangs. If you still have pliers, you can lock them in place, which means that people can't just walk up and steal them unless they have pliers to unlock it. Since you can no longer cook grenades to reduce your fuse, unfortunately there's often time for someone to escape. Also, as an example, the M79 grenade will hit someone if they run to the end of these barracks but not kill them. Then again, they could just run into one of the side rooms. But before writing them off as useless, you can still take someone out with a little creativity. Players will often run forward as the quickest route to escape, so a few locked doors, for example in the same barracks or houses with one way in, and by the time they've tried and realised it's locked, it's already too late for them. You can also leave other grenades, pox vials and grenade launcher rounds in the vicinity while attaching a grenade to the tripwire, and they will trigger from a chain reaction. You can also combo it with a bear trap. The tripwire will cause them to stumble into it, the bear trap will break their legs before the nade explodes. There's a lot more possibilities, and if you want a guaranteed kill with a tripwire, the remote detonators from Claymores, C4 and IEDs can also be added. More about those later. Next up is landmines. Landmines spawn in tier 4 military locations, or tier 3 on Livonia. When arming a landmine, it will tick for 10 seconds before it is active. It will also remain in place for up to 7 days or until activated or disarmed. You can disarm a landmine, but it does have a chance to explode depending on its state and the tool you use. Lockpicks have the best chance to disarm, then screwdrivers, and then knives. Each time you disarm, the landmine's condition will deteriorate, and if it's badly damaged, it will go to ruined and explode no matter what you use, so you might want to avoid disarming those. As for damage, landmines have a small chance to kill a player, as it may hit their head even if they have a helmet. Most of the time though, it will just take off a chunk of health, uncon them for 50 seconds, and break their leg. Be warned, landmines can go off in your inventory if you get shot, so you'll want a container to put them in, a cooking pot, first aid kit, ammo box, teddy bear, and several others will do the job. You can also keep them safe by putting them in plate carrier pouches. They won't explode in pouches either attached to a vest or in your inventory if you don't have one. Landmines only have a small range, so you can't really chain them, but if you drop an item with it and activate the landmine from the ground, it will still be triggered and you can barely see them, especially with grass cover. Pox vials are super effective here because of the long uncon timer, but grenades work well too. It's hardly worth using landmines to raid bases. Technically they're classed as traps anyway, but you'll need more than 30 to destroy a wall, and even taking down a bear needs more than 20. You're best off saving them for players. Moving on to the big boom now, Claymores spawn in the same location as Dayz, as well as the unique tier locations like helicopter crash sites and dynamic military train events. The Claymore comes as a kit. The Claymore itself will be where you place it, and you also get a remote detonator that you can use to trigger it. Remote detonators work up to 100 meters away. You know it's armed and it's in range, as you'll have the option to detonate, and the detonator light on the unit will be red. You can go out of range and it will still be active when you go back within 100 meters. Unlike other explosives, when you detonate a Claymore, the blast will only affect a 90-degree cone from the front. You can tell the front on a placed Claymore as there's writing on the front to indicate it. The blast range to kill is 25 meters. There's also an area around the rest of the Claymore that will uncon you and do about half health if you're standing within a couple of meters. So if you're detonating it, it's best to move back a little. You can safely dismantle the Claymore by interacting it with its detonator, or any other remote detonator for that matter. It will consume the detonator you've used, so if it's linked to another device then that will no longer be active and you won't be able to trigger it. You can also use a screwdriver, lockpick, a knife or even pliers to disarm it, but the Claymore will be ruined and may explode. Pliers have the best chance to disarm, but really there's very little point as you can't use it afterwards. As mentioned earlier, you can also put remote detonators on a tripwire. The Claymore works in the same way, except instead of manually triggering it, the Claymore will explode when the tripwire is walked into. You can use this to strategically place Claymores, which you can also rotate using the middle mouse wheel. Like grenades, you can lock the remote detonator in place on a tripwire using pliers. They may also explode in your inventory if you get shot, so you may want to keep it inside a container. And aside from having the largest range, Claymores are also effective in base raids, needing only 6 to destroy a wall. Also, rather than deploying the Claymore, you can drop it on the floor and shoot it. It still explodes in the same way, with the cone facing forward in the direction you drop it. Oh, and it will take 4 to take down a bear, but keeping it in the cone might be a problem. The plastic explosive is the most powerful in Dayz, and you'll find them by looting unique tier industrial areas. That means you'll be able to find them on the industrial train events, as well as the industrial areas on the map that have a unique tag. Unlike the Claymore, which has its own detonator when you deploy it, you'll need to find an unused detonator. The detonator has 2 parts, the trigger and the receiver. An unused detonator has both units together. When an explosive is armed, you keep the trigger with the receiver attached to the device. You cannot arm another device with just the trigger, but you can disarm one and the trigger will get the receiver back, making it whole. You can repair remote detonators. Give it a hawk to spit on that thing with an electrical repair kit. Luckily, detonators spawn in the same locations as plastic explosives though. When you place the explosive, it can be mounted on the floor, walls or on doors, and then it just needs arming. You can dismantle it again by interacting with it with the detonator. A screwdriver, lockpick, knife or pliers will also work, but it will ruin the detonator. Plastic explosives won't explode in your inventory if you shoot it when it's armed, or even from another explosion in the vicinity. It's the most powerful raiding item, needing only 2 to take down a wall. It also needs 2 to kill a bear. The M79 Grenade Launcher, Thumper, Noob Tube, call it what you will, can be found in unique military areas on both maps. It can take 3 different types of 40mm grenades. Smoke rounds can be found in all military areas across both maps. The more desirable ones are the gas and explosive grenades though. Explosive grenades are found in many locations and are not too hard to find. Tier 3, T4 and unique military on Chernarus, or Tier 2, 3 and unique on Livonia. The gas rounds are harder to get, spawning only in static gas zones at Riffy and Pavlovo and only in the bunker on Livonia. As the grenades are active as soon as they're fired, it means there is no safe distance and you can easily blow yourself up if you're not careful. The explosive grenades have a damage radius of 20 meters and will kill someone within 10, so you'll want to be at least 1 bus length away from its impact to not die, or 2 to not take any damage. The 40mm gas grenades act just like a pox vial except in projectile form, which is arguably a lot easier to gas someone out of a building as you can still maintain cover. The explosive and gas rounds can explode in your inventory if you're shot or if they're attached to a vest. This does mean that if you don't have the launcher, you can still place the grenade somewhere and shoot them, which will trigger them when they ruin, or leave them close to other explosives which will also set them off. They cannot be placed directly onto tripwires though, and you'll need 12 to destroy walls just like regular grenades, or 6 to kill a bear. Finally, we come to improvised explosives or IEDs. You can craft the IED from a yellow protector case and an electrical repair kit. Both are found in industrial areas around the map. You can use any combination of 2 explosives in the crafted device. grenades, flashbangs, POX vials, plastic explosives, 40mm grenades and landmines. Much like the plastic explosive, you can arm the IED with a remote detonator, or you can set the timer with a kitchen timer or alarm clock and use that instead. As for damage, the IED itself is just a carrier for the explosives, much like the tripwire. It doesn't do any damage itself, so it entirely depends on what you put in it. It does mean though that you can take down a wall in one go if you put 2 plastic explosives inside, and you can do that with a single detonator or clock. It also means you can make use of some of the tripwire combos without leaving items in the vicinity. Obviously, if you're placing it as a trap, the yellow case of the IED stands out. You may have to get a little creative when placing it so it's at least partially hidden. So there you go, Dayz traps and explosives explained. Now go blow some stuff up. If you're after some of the mouse related tips and tricks, watch this video next. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.